Hello everyone, thank you for joining on this just before Christmas. We'll record this webinar. Oh, it's already recording, that's fine. And I'll share my slides. Today we'll be talking a little bit about pressure ulcers. Bear with me, it's not showing on the... Let me just find the slides. Just loading. We'll try and keep it short as it's Christmas. So yes, talking about pressure ulcers today, and just a reminder, we're keeping the recordings and all our slides online on our SharePoint, and we'll host them ongoing. It's not just related to the PQS scheme, it's quite useful, I guess, for appropriate prescribing in general. So we'll be doing a little bit of summary of PQS anyway, and some reminders before we get stuck in with the pressure ulcers. So just a reminder about the standing operating procedure, SOP. The deadline had finished back in the summer. With the exceptional circumstances, a few practices have been submitting it just goes to panel. But for those practices that have submitted, we have got back to you and you would have been awarded 5 points towards the target. We have also been supplying some templates that you might find useful for interacting with dietitians or the patients to get some up-to-date weight information and set some expectations about using ONS in general. And then we have this dashboard on SharePoint. So monthly the Bob team send out a dashboard to the practice managers and prescribing leads or PQS leads, but we also have a nutrition specific dashboard that gives you a bit more of a breakdown into what your prescribing is looking like and how it's trending throughout the year. So it looks at the items prescribed and the 9-month rolling period, but can give you a bit more information further down with some extra info for your knowledge. And this is showing the impact of the target so far. So the top line is those ensures. They are trending down throughout this year, thankfully. And we are seeing more prescribing of the first line products, the formulary products, which is what we'd like to see. So we are getting there towards our target on average. And then there's some practices that are more than that, some that are less than that. So on average, we're getting there. And we're thankful for all practices that are working towards this target. And just to be clear, that there is different formularies for patients that use these sip feeds down their tube. So if they have it just to drink and they don't have a tube, that is a separate formulary. That's the one that we're looking at for PQS scheme. But if they are tube fed, they're under a dietitian, the dietitian's monitoring them, they get their feeds delivered, they have a different formulary. So it's different positions. So just to summarise, the Fortisips are on the amber formulary, but they are mixed status for ONS. So the Fortisip bottle is non-formulary. We shouldn't be seeing any prescribing of that for sip feeding. Fortisip compact can be used if they've tried all others and they don't get on with it. And Fortisip compact protein really should only be used by specialists, but we are seeing some increase in that prescribing, we're thinking, because it's being used in hospital. And then people are having it on discharge and continuing to use it in the community. And all ensures are non-formulary, both for tube feeding and for sip feeding. And just for some reassurance about this non-preferred ONS, the target allows for a buffer for those patients that do have reasons to stay on the non-preferred ONS. We know there's always going to be some that have to stay on it or don't want to switch from it, and that's why there is a buffer. So we are putting together a simple evidence form, nothing like last year's, just a simple form where you can keep track of where you have patients that have a clinical justification for staying on that non-preferred ONS, and we'll be putting that up on SharePoint. But it's just so you can keep track for the appeals at the end of the year if you've been working to reduce your usage of the non-preferred ONS, and if you're still seeing some of that usage for valid reason, we will review those decisions at the end of the year during the appeals. Just a reminder about care homes. Back in the autumn, we had a position statement approved that across Bob, we've come to an aligned position with a lot of work that went into it, that ONS will not be recommended for routine use in care home residents. If you want any further information about that, happy to come and talk to your practice. We have been delivering the care home training. We've already trained individuals from over 100 care homes, and it's in full swing, so we still have more sessions in the future. So keep on promoting it to your care homes. If you work with them, we still have spaces for people to attend. And the specific criteria of the position statement is that it should only really be used where food first isn't working, not appropriate, for these really exceptional circumstances, like they've got conditions that mean they don't absorb food very well, or they're burning off more than they can physically eat, they've got swallowing difficulties, or they're tube fed. Certain scenarios like that. The list is not exhaustive, it's just to give some examples, but for those routine residents, they should be on a food-based intervention only. I hope everyone can still see it. My screen's gone a bit funny. And just to remind at homes, we've still got some sessions in January and February, and we'll be adding on some more in March. We've got both virtual and face-to-face sessions. We've had some GPs attend just to upskill, I guess, and be more informed. So you're more than welcome to attend yourselves, but primarily it's for care home staff. So we're going to talk about pressure ulcers. So in terms of what they are, they are injuries to the skin and the underlying tissue, usually caused by that pressure on the skin, and that usually develops where the bones are close to the skin. So that tends to be that lower back and spine, hips, heels, and elbows. And they are caused by a number of reasons that are related to food and fluid intake. So they are nutritionally related, and they do affect both underweight and overweight individuals. And so you reduce risk by being a healthy weight. So if you're underweight, the skin is too thin, and if you're overweight, you're less mobile. So that there's different factors contributing, and nutrition can be poor with both of those situations. So how we can prevent pressure injuries? It's through, one, maintaining that healthy weight, but also eating a varied and balanced diet. We know the skin needs a really good supply of nutrients and fluid to keep it supple and in good condition. So I've just said that when you're underweight, they've got less padding, but when you're overweight, and if you've lost weight, it might be that you also lose some of those stores of all those good nutrients that helps keep skin strong, and then wounds, once present, will take even longer to heal. And then once with overweight, then less mobile, and then that's also more weight causing more pressure on those areas. So it's important for people with pressure ulcers to eat well, to get those wounds to heal once they are there, and also to prevent them from occurring in the first place. And there are different food groups that will contribute in different ways. So the main priority for pressure ulcers is protein, and that is because the wounds themselves leak protein in the exudate, the fluids that are leaking from the wound contain protein. So then that needs for protein even above and beyond what they're already eating to sustain all their regular protein needs. So protein sources don't have to just be meat and fish and egg based, but also cheeses, beans, pulses, soya products, vegetarian alternatives, nuts, and tofu and things like that. So they will supply some protein, and then for carbohydrate, that will supply energy. So we need to try and have a portion of carbohydrate each meal, and protein 2 to 3 servings a day. We also need dairy, so we should be aiming for 2 to 3 portions of dairy or dairy-free alternatives a day. It's just worth pointing out that dairy-free alternatives are lower in protein and won't have as much in the sense of minerals, so you have to check the label to make sure they're fortified. We want to make sure there's calcium added, iodine added to there, but that's why we recommend dairy. It's just because it's already naturally present and can be easier to consume. So 2 to 3 servings a day, and a serving might look like a 125 gram pot of yogurt, or a 200 ml serving of milk, or a matchbox size piece of cheese, for example. In terms of fruit and veg, we want to aim for the rainbow, and we all know about aiming for 5 a day. So that can be any types, fresh, frozen, tinned, they all count. And they provide all the vitamins and minerals that we need to promote the wound healing. I've added fibre anyway, that we don't need fibre for wound healing, but it's just a benefit of fruit and vegetables. And eating the rainbow contributes because then you're getting all the diverse sources of the vitamins and minerals and all those extra good things that are in fruits and veg, like antioxidants and phyto, all these different neurochemicals that help us, all our bodies to work well. And then fluid is the other main factor. So we need to have 1.6 to 2 litres a day, and that can be from different sources. Ideally, it should be decaffeinated and non-alcohol, but if they're not going to drink anything else, then any fluid does count. Obviously, water's the best, but if they're not going to drink, then any drink is good. And that helps support that prevention and healing of the pressure ulcers. Just a bit of extra information, if they're underweight, what you can recommend. So if you've got a patient there and you've weighed them and you've done their weight against their height to measure their BMI and they're flagging as being underweight, that shows they've got one, they're at risk of malnutrition, but it also will make that pressure ulcer much more difficult to heal. So certain things that you could recommend if you've got someone with you is to just talk about what they're eating and drinking and see if there are any small changes that they can make to make it a bit more nourishing. So that's why we talk about food-based interventions, which would be like enriching their meals. And that means rather than eating more, because they'll struggle if they've got a poor appetite, that means really making the most of what they are eating, so adding in nourishing and fortifying ingredients to what they're already eating. So that could be milk powder, and that contributes to that extra protein and the vitamins, minerals, or grated cheese sprinkled on top. Egg can be added in, a little bit more challenging. We've been talking about it in the care home training where you can add in egg, but it's definitely something to be added. Some people discussed adding it into pasta sauces, like whisking it in at the end, or adding extra egg when having Yorkshire puddings, or extra eggs in cakes, or having eggs as a snack as an alternative. And then nuts, if they don't have any allergies, nuts and nut butters, ground almonds can be sprinkled into sauces, baked into cakes, and then that's extra energy and extra protein, and then they're got some vitamins, minerals in them as well. As well as eating, they can have some nourishing drinks. We've got lots and lots and lots of recipes on our nourishing drinks, the milky ones, the dairy-free ones, and the fruity ones. And we would say aim for 2 a day. Obviously, that's an aim. Some people might get on better with having extra snacks. Some people would get better with having more drinks. It depends. But simple swaps, rather than having a splash of milk in your coffee, having a latte-based style, so warming up a cup of hot milk, adding extra milk powder on top, and then adding the coffee would just make a huge difference to their overall intakes. And if they're finding meals hard to prepare, there are some really good home delivery services like Wiltshire Farm Foods. And thinking about lower income families, there are delivery services or like food boxes services like the Trussell Trust, for example. And so when I was working during COVID, certain food banks were putting on vouchers and things like that. A little bit out of the practice now. I don't know what they're offering now because I don't see patients anymore, but worth looking into and updating on what's happening in the area, what services are around for freebies, vouchers and support. And if they're overweight, they still need a balanced diet. So it's not recommended to try and change their weight at the same time as trying to treat a pressure ulcer. So it's because we're trying to get them to have enough nutrition. So if you're then also trying to promote weight loss, they might then reduce what they're eating and miss out on certain of those key nutrients that they're needing to heal their wound. And obviously we don't want to recommend they go all out and have loads of high calorie, high fat, high sugar foods, as that won't be nourishing, won't promote their wound healing, and then also then increase weight and cause even more pressure on their wound. So we want to keep their weight stable, but really increase the nutrient density of their diet. And doing that through some healthier cooking methods like grilling, baking, microwaving and steaming. They can still switch to some lower fat versions of their food, but really promote the higher protein foods. So we have a resource on high protein snacks, but that could be sweet things like there's yogurts, there's so much now, there's like pouches, you can get high protein cereal bars, there's so much, even high protein cereals and all sorts. But regular foods like low-fat rice pudding, low-fat custard, because they're milky, they have some added protein in them. And again, boiled eggs, cheap snack, easy to eat, and then got some protein in there. But ideally, if they're going to have nourishing drinks, aim for not too much of the sugary part. So the homemade nourishing milkshake drink, long name, we fortify it with with Nesquik, so it's milk powder and Nesquik, but Nesquik's pretty sugary, so they might want to do like an adjusted version, slightly less of the Nesquik, but still making sure they're getting the milk and the milk powder to get the nourishing part of it. In terms of supplements, so if you're having a well-balanced diet, you shouldn't need to have supplements. However, obviously their needs are increased when they've got a wound, and if you have concerns that their diet is poor, then it might be appropriate then to recommend that they purchase an A to Z type supplement. They're quite cheap and available from most supermarkets and pharmacies, or available online. And just a reminder that in terms of over-the-counter prescribing, supplements wouldn't be recommended to be prescribed, and they're something that patients should be recommended to purchase themselves. But they're very cheap, only a few pounds a pot, and they last all month with one a day. You might want to recommend, actually, just having a thought, some of these A to Z tablets can be quite large and chunky, and that I find they're best taken with a meal, because they can just sit a bit uncomfortably and can cause a bit of nausea or a bit of reflux if you're a bit sensitive stomached in the morning. So they might want to have it in with their evening meal. And it's good to, if you're building in a new habit like taking a supplement, it's hard to remember to take it if it's new. So having it in like a visible place, like their bedside tables, they have it whenever they have their morning drink, if they're not a person that gets nauseous, or always having it like on the dinner table or something. So something visually to remind them and cue them to take it. A note on SIP feeds, a supplement. So as an aside, so for care homes, that is one of those exceptional circumstances. If they do have a pressure ulcer that's not healing, then that counts as one of those circumstances where ONS would still be appropriate and can be considered. For out of care homes, people in their own homes, again, supplements can be considered if they've got these pressure ulcers that aren't healing. So we always try and promote food first, and they should try and be, adding in extra protein into their diet and having healthy and balanced, trying to get all these different nutrients in. And if the wound is still not healing, then that might be where they're recommended to take some supplements. The standard ones are fine to start with, and then a dietitian might need to get involved if they're still struggling, and then they can recommend some of these modular high protein supplements that's just little shots of extra protein. But you might need to speak with a dietitian for advice on those ones. In terms of diabetes, it's similar to the overweight individuals. I know they are not the same, but if someone has poorly controlled diabetes, that will delay their wound healing, because of if the diabetes is poorly controlled, they'll have more sugars in their bloodstream, and that impairs wound healing. So we want to support them with their diabetes control as priority, and then that will complement and support their wound healing. So with supporting their diabetes control, that means reducing sugars intake, and then you might want to replace that with some extra protein, and then as a double win, that will then also promote the wound healing. With recommendations for supplements, we have been, is it live yet? We've just had approved an amendment to our formulary documents to make it a little bit more clear, the safety messaging around diabetes and oral nutritional supplements, because some supplements are much higher in sugar than others. So the juice-based ones, and even the powdered milkshake style, such as Ames Shake, they are higher in sugar. So we've put some more messaging in there just to make it a little bit more clear that if you do have a patient that's got poorly controlled diabetes, which ones to be a bit more cautious around using and which ones might be better. And if you are confused, understandably, then do always speak to us for advice. We do know it's complex out there with so many different products, and how patients' complexities have really increased in recent years. So all in summary, pressure injuries, also known as pressure ulcers, also known as pressure sores, also known as bed sores. They are caused by prolonged pressure on the skin, and simply to heal them and to treat them and manage them, we're aiming for a healthy body weight and a healthy balanced diet, and that will also reduce the risk of them occurring. Obviously, in an ideal world, some people have wounds for years, and that they do need MDT approach with nursing and dietitians to get them under control. If they have a pressure injury, the eating and drinking well as well will help it to heal, because that will provide the body with the nutrients it needs for enabling that wound healing. And if their diet is a little bit poor, then they can top it up with a vitamin mineral supplement. And if they're still needing some extra support, then supplements can be prescribed by yourselves for the starter ones. And then if still having difficulty, referring to a dietitian to get some specialist supplements prescribed. I've linked here on our slides to our wound care resource, but also our protein-rich snacks resource. To be honest, there's so many more snacks than are on that resource now, but it's definitely a good starter with the yogurts and the drinks and the pots and things like that, but there definitely are more out there. I've added a few references throughout, and then next year in end of January, we are going to be sharing about dysphagia with food-based intervention, or a bit of both. So if there are any questions today, I can take them. I'll wait on a minute or two, and if not, then I will let you all go to have a lovely rest of your lunch and Christmas. I think we've got no questions, so I'll stop the recording there. Oh, what's on the chat? Thank you. Great. Wonderful. Okay, I'll stop the recording there. And as always, do reach out. I'm only here today and then off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but back in Monday, Tuesday if there are any queries. Obviously, we have a whole team that can support with queries or, prescription issues. We aren't aware of any stock issues over Christmas, but disasters. No, I'm not going to say it. They can happen, they won't. Yeah, if you've got any issues, do reach out by email and someone will pick it up. We've got people in every day. All right, everyone, take care. Bye.